first assignment in the CPC201 course is the limited palette cast painting. So this is sort of a continuation, like we mentioned in the intro, from our master copy limited palette. But this time we're going with some really low chroma colors. We're painting from casts, which are inherently white. The light that's going to go on these casts is probably going to be white, maybe slightly blue shifted, perhaps yellow shifted if you select an incandescent bulb, although that increases the challenge quite a bit. So we don't need highly chromatic colors. And in fact, if you start with something or a set of red, yellow, and blue that's very chromatic, such as a cobalt blue and a cadmium red and a cadmium yellow, you're probably going to be spending the majority of your mixing time desaturating them, lowering the chroma, neutralizing them by getting even mixtures of the red, yellow, and blue, and then adjusting the value. So it's not very practical, or at least time efficient, to be selecting very high chroma colors. Also keep in mind that because we are using a limited palette, which gives us limited value options compared to a full palette range, you're going to want to try to select a red, yellow, and blue that are in different value groups. So most yellows are naturally a little lighter. Most reds naturally migrate towards the mid-value or dark range, so select one that's in the mid-value range. And most blues naturally occur in the darker range, so make sure you do stick to one of those darker blues. That'll give you the opportunity to hit the full value range without having to completely rely on white to raise or lower your value. Other than that, it's up to you if you want to select a small feature cast, like a lot of the ones we're working with in the CDC program, an ear, a nose, an eye, something like that. Or if you want to tackle a full head. Now my recommendation would be to start with a feature, become familiar with the process, so you can really focus more on understanding paint application and the layering and getting the effects you're wanting to achieve, as well as getting good color relationships. Instead of selecting a cast that's so complex, you have to be focused a lot on the shape aspect. We're already going to have to be focusing on the shape aspect to get it to look right, but we don't want to have to commit so much attention to the shape that we neglect a lot of the color in the paint application. Remember, that's what's separating a painting from a drawing, is the color and the paint application. So I would recommend starting with a cast that is more elementary so that you can target the goals we're seeking here. And then if you are successful at it in a reasonable amount of time, 10, 15, 20, 25 hours, then move on to a cast that is maybe a little bit more complex and see if you can handle a broader range of relationships. Remember, a more simple shape like a nose is going to have a limited amount of value range and color range and edge range because it's just a simple shape. Whereas if we do the whole face, all of a sudden you're dealing with pieces of hair and making sure the relationship to the ear is correct and the relationship to the chin is correct and the relationship inside the eye is correct. So there's a lot of little relationships that we have to start to deal with if we're working with a large bust head cast. So again, I recommend starting with something simple. If you're working at home and you don't have access to a cast, select some or go purchase some matte white spray paint and then just pick any object that's a reasonable size, give it enough coats of spray paint to get it matte and flat, and then use that as a cast. And again, you can select objects that are simple, a piece of wax fruit or something like that, sprayed white becomes the look of a white cast. That gives you a simple shape that you can start to practice taking the three-dimensional real world and putting it on a flat canvas and then building up those color and value relationships. So there's a lot of options for you that you can do it at home for yourself, make it nice and easy. If you want a shadow box, which certainly creates a more dynamic appeal in one of these plaster casts, and if you're here in the studio, you can see examples of cast drawings or paintings that were done on our gray toned wall versus our shadow boxes, and certainly the ones done in the shadow boxes with a nice dark background pop, and from across the room people respond to them right away. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the technical handling of them, it just has to do more of a compositional thing. High contrast becomes more appealing, it has sort of that classical chiaroscuro effect. So if you want to create a shadow box at home yourself, you don't need to go to any elaborate lengths. Just get a decent sized cardboard box, yay big. Spray paint the interior of it a matte black, and then cut a hole somewhere on the sides or the top that you can stick a lamp shining through. And the hole doesn't have to be large, maybe yay big, so that you can shine the hole through and get a nice directional lighting on your cast. And then the open hole of the box, just have the little box flaps angling towards you to mitigate the light coming in from different directions. So that'll give you a nice, clean, sort of concealed area where you don't have a lot of bouncing reflective light around there, and you can create a shadow box for just the cost of a cheap cardboard box. The nice thing about that as well is, as you do different still lifes, you can keep buying new boxes and making new shadow boxes for each one to get a custom size. So you don't always have to work with the same small shadow box. You can go bigger or smaller as needed. So that's going to be the assignment here. If you're still feeling uncomfortable working with color and applying paint at this stage, you can do a more preliminary exercise, which is just using black paint and white paint, and do a closed grisaille painting of a plaster cast. Once you develop the paint application as well as all the shape, value, edge aspects of the painting and it looks solid, then execute another one where you are using a limited palette and try to keep those colors really low chroma and believable to the lighting condition that exists in your set.